Welcome to Bound by Books. I am one of your hosts, Danielle Bannister, and joining me today is fellow writer Tina Moss. Welcome, Tina!
I love that you always have like the game show intro. It's like, come on now.
You're the next contestant on Bound by Books. I'm really regretting the fact that I just kind of waved my arms though, because then you see like the jiggle.
Oh
I'm
no.
having
Oh,
to work on the arms now. I'm realizing the arms
you're good.
are
You're good.
sorely lacking in the workout routine.
Well, other than
Oh
your
well.
workout routine, how are you doing?
I am doing well. I'm doing well. Started a new day job, and I finally sort of feel like after a few months, I kind of know what I'm doing now for the most part.
Nice.
So, that's always hard when you're starting a new job, especially something that you've never ever done before. You just feel like a fish
Yep.
out of water. You feel like you're more of a thorn in somebody's side because you're like, how do I do this? What did you? Yeah. So I'm
Yeah.
asking a lot less questions these days. So I'm feeling much more
Nice.
more confident in what I'm supposed to be doing. What about you? What's new with you?
I had a busy weekend. We had a pool party at
Oh,
my
nice.
father-in-law and his girlfriend's house. It was lovely. And then we had my family over on the Sunday, so I'm a little beat up
Yeah.
hosting.
Family is great, but they're also exhausting.
Exactly. No, we had a really good time and everybody was great, but it's tiring hosting too, because then you have, all the cleanup and all the prep work
And not to
beforehand.
mention the
So
sun drains you,
the sun, I am not built for the sun. Like if you're on YouTube, you can
Either.
understand it's
Yeah.
not happening. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm looking a little orange today. We were trying to figure that out before, but it's just the lighting in here. I'm not in my office. I got my virtual background, so
Right. Right.
it's fine. It's
You're
all
normally
fine.
just as pale as I am. It's fine.
Exactly.
It's fine. It's fine.
Exactly. But I also heard you have I think as of this podcast going up, you will have your new release this week.
I will. It
Yay!
releases on August 9.
That's
So, yeah,
exciting.
volume three of Waking Up to Me.
Wow.
Volumes 4 and 5 will release shortly, but volume 3 is dropping. And, it's been an experience doing my first ever series, a novella series. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of
Yeah.
work trying to prep and plan for something like that. So, I think we've done a couple of podcasts on, writing series. So if that's something that you've
Yep.
ever been considering, check that out. You can learn from our mistakes
Yeah, we've
on
definitely
what
done a
to
couple on those.
avoid.
Yeah, but that's so exciting. Congrats.
Yeah, and you just had a recent release yourself, did you not?
I did. I did. So I think it will be last week or the week before. It's Aliens Temptation. This one up here, right over my shoulder in my virtual background.
One
Yeah,
of the many
it's
naked men chest covers.
yes, one of the alien men chests. Yeah, so it's book 3, and I have I think 6 planned for this series, but then there's like 3 spin-off series, so I'm gonna be writing this for a while.
Ain't nothing wrong with that. Ain't
Nope,
nothing wrong with that.
nope, I'm
But
enjoying
we're
it.
not talking about series. Well, not really, not in that sense. Today, you and I, since we last recorded,
Marvel.
you and I, another sort of Marvel movie has dropped. And
Mhm.
as the two MCU fans in our podcast groups, we are the ones to speak about the movies as they come out. We like to reflect upon them in terms of their writing, things that we can learn from what they got right, and even the things that maybe they didn't get right. So it's a learning experience, I think, when you're watching such a huge successful franchise. What are they doing right, so that we
Mhm.
can sort of emulate that, and then also what are they doing wrong so we don't emulate that. So I think it's safe to say that we're going to be talking about Thor: Love and Thunder today. Our last podcast, we talked about the multiverse of madness. So if you missed that one, go back and check that out, because we had some thoughts on that one.
A lot of thoughts and a lot of
A
feelings.
lot of thoughts. And I don't think you and I really haven't chatted much about Thor: Love and Thunder. So I'm not
No.
quite sure what your take is on that. But before we dive a little bit too deep into the actual movie, I have a general curiosity.
Mhm.
we've started this phase 4, this multiverse saga is what they're going to be calling it.
Right.
There's still lots more content to shape up this phase 4. How do you think phase 4 is shaping up for you so far with the projects that they have out so far?
So I think phase 4 feels to me like a lot of experimentation, which is very exciting for Marvel, because Marvel has had a tried and true formula for so long, and there is a lot to say about sticking to that formula and what works, right? But there is also something to say for experimenting and kind of getting out of the box that you've put yourself in. And I feel like Marvel's phase 4 is very, very much about doing that. So from that perspective, it's very exciting. From a fan who's used to the kind of Marvel-esque formula, there is also a danger in disappointing your fan base or losing part of your fan base. For me personally, I like a lot of the directions that Marvel's going in. I like how they're testing new waters, trying to gain new demographics of Marvel fans who, weren't really a part of the MCU before. I think this Miss Marvel is a good example of trying to get a younger generation, a more diverse generation in, which is awesome. Even if the show isn't personally for me, it's not for my demographic. I feel like anytime you can bring in a new audience is a good thing. And I'm excited about it for the most part. I really like the things that they're doing and trying and testing the waters. I might not like all of it from a film fan perspective, but I appreciate it from artistic perspective. What about you?
Sure. No, you have a very, very valid point there, that they are, I think they're trying to keep some of the main thrust, but they are experimenting a lot. I think one of the things they're experimenting a lot with is director freedom. They're really allowing, I think, their directors to have much more control and freedom over it. I think Kevin's sort of backing off a little bit and not being so over the shoulder, which might account for some of the reasons that some are saying it doesn't feel right, because it's not what they're used to. It's not the formula, right? They're breaking out of the formula. It's sort of the formula, but they're messing with it. It's like new Coke. It's the same product, but it tastes different. And so it takes some getting used to, but I think you're right. There is a danger in not experimenting with it, and it can get stale and flat, like a flat Coke. And you don't want that. So I think you're right. I think they're trying to find what's that right balance of letting the directors really put their thumbprint on a project and making sure that the overall vision is still in place, because so many of these projects are connected. It's not your typical sort of movie where the director is, the be all end all. There's other factors at play. So with that as a sort of a segue, let's talk now about Thor: Love and Thunder, the only project so far that has one superhero that has 4 movies. I'm sure we'll see more of that as we go on, but Thor's the first one to have 4 movies.
Yep.
What was your experience going to this movie? Did you have high expectations? Did they meet them? What were your, I guess, overall thoughts?
Definitely had high expectations after Ragnarok, because Ragnarok is kind of like, it's got to be up there in top 5 of Marvel movies for me.
Absolutely,
it's a peak, it's the pinnacle. It's I love the kind of campy Flash Gordon-esque vibes of it. It still had a solid storyline and emotional impact behind it, and I think this was trying to do that, but my overall take is it bit off more than it could chew. That's what I feel like in the whole movie. It was just a very vast movie in the sense we had a lot of perspectives. We had Jane, who was Mighty Thor. We had Thor. We had Valkyrie. We had the kids. We had the villain. And they all kind of had their own stories to tell. And they were woven in a way that was reminiscent of Infinity War saga, Endgame for me, but because we didn't have the same backstories for each of the characters that we did in the Infinity War saga movies, it didn't have the same coming together thread.
Yeah.
I think if we would have had like a Valkyrie movie before this, if Guardians would have came out possibly before this as it was originally intended, we had the production issues and COVID, and I know that Guardians was supposed to come out before this. It might have given us a little more context if we would have had Jane in the last Thor movie, or even a Jane Mighty Thor movie or TV show on its own. We just didn't have enough going into what felt like a very epic saga movie to me, rather than a Thor campy fun movie, and they tried to do both,
Right.
which didn't quite work, which gets us into that tone issue that we were really talking about, and why it matters so much. How did you feel going into it?
Well, I was really excited because I loved Ragnarok. I was like, yes, this is going to be great. Taika can do no wrong. It's going to be awesome. And I remember sitting in the theater and seeing like the bird alien things, and I went, oh, we're going in this direction. We're going for full on camp and no heart. Got it. I'm less excited now. I feel like they sacrificed heart for humor.
Yeah, and they tried, because I mean, there is a extremely sad storylines in this movie.
But they don't put any weight on it. There's no weight to that storyline. So I don't feel bad for Mighty Thor at all. I don't, because there's no weight given to it.
I feel worse for the villain and Christian Bale, by the way.
Oh, I know.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Yes. That was quite a performance. I was very, very impressed with him. But absolutely. I feel more weight for the villain and his story, and his extremely tragic story, than I do for Jane, who I've known for 2 films.
Exactly.
So that's a problem.
Yeah. And I think that's the nail on the head. It's the tone conflict that really did it for me, because it felt like they were trying to make 2 separate movies. They wanted to make this goofy sort of spectacle thing, but they also wanted to introduce, this epic villain and this really, sad diagnosis of Jane. And it didn't work for me. They were too opposite.
The redemptive romance also? Like, wait, oh, by the way, there's also this romance element?
Sure. I think they wanted there to be, but I still feel zero chemistry between them.
You didn't need it. You actually didn't need. I know that, again, and we're both, we both write romance. We both love romantic subplots, but I almost felt like if they would have kept it as a friendship and as a like really respectful kind of friendship, and we understood where we went in life and why things were different, rather than getting back together, I felt like that probably would have been more impactful than the romantic relationship was. I get why they did it, but it didn't fit. It didn't fit for the characters, where they had gone in their stories. Plus, we had this like nod to Valkyrie. Like, give her a girlfriend, man.
I know.
A romantic subplot.
I think they are so they're pushing those boundaries, right? They're with Loki, being fluid, and then this movie like gently touched on it. It's already getting banned in countries because of that gentle push. I mean, I get why they are hesitant to push, but there needs to be a push.
There needs to be, and if you're not going to do it, then what's the point
don't
of
do it at all. Right? Yeah. Right. Don't
just tip your hat at it, because
don't be like, I'm acknowledging. No, that's you're not being an ally in that way.
Well, that was the same I felt with the kid, who I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm not sure. They didn't put a label on the child, but it was clear that the child was either trans or non-binary or some sort of gender fluidity to the child. But it didn't have the impact on the story that it should have. Like, if you're going to include that, that's fine, but there has to be something to it. It can't just be like, oh, and by the way, this person is this, or oh, by the way, this person is that, because you're just it feels performative. It doesn't feel authentic to the story.
Yeah. And here's, I think, maybe why the tone failed, and I'd love to know your thoughts on this. There is talk that there is a 4-hour long version of this movie, of all the scenes that they sort of improvised and just threw on out there. To me, that lets me know that there probably wasn't much of a script per se if you're recording that
Yeah.
much. And I feel like maybe that was a really, I think the script needed several more pass throughs before they started filming.
I almost wonder if there were just like beat points that they had to hit, like for those, non-writers out there listening, basically you set up like a beat sheet as to different plot points that you want to hit in your script or in your book. And it almost feels to me like that was there. They hit like, okay, we got to get to, Zeus's place, and we got to get the
Right.
kids kidnapped, and we got to get this, but it didn't feel like a lot of that was filled in and flushed out.
No.
So we just kind of had this like loose
Make it up. Let
storyline.
trust the actors to make up the
Yeah.
plot. You know what? The actors are not writers.
Exactly. For some
they may
brilliant actors,
have some
but
great
not writers.
lines, but the end of the day, there really needs to be. And I know Taika writes a lot of the stuff, so there might
Mhm.
have been something on the page. But if he followed what was on the page,
It didn't feel like it.
it didn't feel like there was a cohesive story on paper.
Right. And some of it was so brilliant and so reminded me of Ragnarok. Like the screaming goats, I howled. I was howl laughing in the theater. Like brilliant from so many perspectives, because I saw the little plushies out there, the little toy goats. I'm like, yep. Marketing brilliance everywhere. But again, like if you're gonna have a movie where you have screaming goats that literally lets you travel through interdimensions with, the what's the axe called? What's the battle axe called?
Thor's axe, Stormbreaker. Sorry.
Right. Yeah, blanked out. If you're gonna have goats with Stormbreaker at the, again, guiding you into different worlds, like that's not a serious film. That's just not a serious. If you're gonna have Zeus be this massive jerk,
right.
And where was the nod to Gladiator? I kept waiting for it. I kept waiting for the line, but they didn't give it to me. But anyway,
it feels like for this movie, if they wanted to go as camp as they did, they should not have added such serious characters like Thor and the cancer diagnosis.
Exactly.
Those just should not have been included. Make it light and fluffy. But then you sort of run into, well, then what's the arc of this movie? I don't know what the arc of this movie. I mean, Thor 1, it was a pretty clear arc to me. There's this, arrogant boy who doesn't know how to rule, sort of learning how to become a man. And, sure, that's a good arc. In the second arc, the script wasn't as good, but there's definitely an arc there, right? He's losing the loss of his mother, the betrayal of his brother, all of that sort of stuff is making him grow as a character and become more. In Ragnarok, he was fighting with his own worthiness, with his place of the throne, and learning to accept his brother, flaw and all. So he's growing, he's maturing. In Thor 4, I'm not sure he grew at all, except in muscle.
Okay, so two problems. Again, we get the off-page, off-screen kind of montage of him with the Guardians. And in my mind, he's gone through now these adventures with the Guardians of the Galaxy, which are probably going to be very funny and very campy and all that. But my suspicion would be there was the character growth that we needed would be there. And that this new Thor might make more sense if we had that. And because we don't have that, we skipped over any and all of those adventures to whoever this person is now that we don't know, because we didn't get to see it. And they didn't do enough of a recap of it to say, like, okay, how did he grow and change? Obviously, he learned to have, another found family after the Avengers, but then he immediately loses that found family to kind of go off on his own. And it's kind of this funny thing where, like, he really cares about them and they maybe don't care about him as much, or that's
Right.
what's implied. It's amusing, but from a character development standpoint, it doesn't really tell us anything.
Yeah.
And this wasn't his movie at the end of the day. This really was the villain's movie, and to a lesser extent Jane's movie, but also not as, again, other than, oh, I have cancer, there wasn't a lot of growth to her either.
No. Well, any sort of growth or whatever feels like it was happening off screen, things that were told to us and we didn't get to see it. Like, why not show us, Mjolnir coming together, Mew Mew coming together?
Yes.
Why not show that moment instead of, I mean, like, I get you wanted the grand reveal, but we wanted to see that.
Yeah.
I mean, is it worth it?
I am still confused as to how she's connected to it.
No idea. No
Okay,
idea.
cool. I thought it was
I'm
just
assuming it just called to her, because I think it's because he put, he decided, he whispered to it to sort of watch over her or whatever, and that,
okay.
protect over her. But it wasn't very clear. It wasn't a strong sort of connection. It would have been nice to sort of see that, to maybe have she hearing it calling to whatever. We didn't get to see any of that. You know what else we didn't get to see? Any god butchering. From this villain that's supposed to be awful at god slaying.
That's a really good point.
We didn't get to see it.
Is he actually? You're right. I'm trying to think if at any point on screen we actually see him.
I mean, I think that first god he takes care of, but
right,
and then he has his little shadowy beasts at one point, but he's not killing gods. He's killing, the people that are fighting. We don't see him kill the gods, like that big, huge monster in the snow.
Right.
We get to see that.
And
why didn't we get to see that?
What a strange kind of, juxtaposition between, like, again, we're gonna go back to tone. Between, I want to make this campy film because that's what worked in Ragnarok and that's what everybody loved, and I'm going to put this villain that is a god butcher with a super tragic past, losing his daughter in the opening scenes of the film to go on this vengeance quest. Like, this does not compute. Forget Thor for a second. That alone doesn't compute.
They don't go together. They do not complement each other, and so they're competing storylines. And there's more camp storylines, so that's what you ultimately get. But that's not to say that there weren't some really great moments in this movie. That whole sort of black and white moment on that planet, where it's just the colors sort of surrounding the fighting implements. That was good. There was some very beautiful and some very funny scenes, but
and the funny part is, even after all the things we're talking about, I still liked it. Like, I still had a good time.
I'll watch it again, but it just
I still
wasn't
laughed.
what I wanted it to be.
Right. I still enjoy the my friends kind of came out of it like, what was that? And I was like, I don't know. And like, I don't think I liked it. I'm like, I think I did. I'm not sure. I think I did. I had a good time.
Then it wasn't, I'm trying to like place it in terms of like 1 through 4. And this one is sort of tied for it's like it's either it's like third because Dark World has to be last.
You know what? And it's so funny. Again, I hate to keep harping on it, but again, going back to tone, because that is the theme of our podcast. I think about Dark World, right?
Different tone from the first one,
but they had the tone of the movie correct. Like, if you're going to talk about just strictly tone, to take out the actual, writing of it for a second, they had the tone correct. Like, they called it Dark World, they wanted to go dark. They told the story that they wanted to tell, and I didn't have any issue with tone in that movie. I had plenty of other issues, but as far as tone goes, they hit the mark that they were going for. I think the big issue was, like you said, and this is true of all 4 movies, is the continuity between the 4 is severely lacking, because we get different types of movies, different tones in every single film. And when you're talking about a series, you can't have that. You can't have this, huge divergence from the first film, second film, third film, fourth film. So when you're writing, it's really important to remember not only does your tone have to be on point in book one, it has to then follow through for the rest of the series. You can get perpetually in one direction, like you can get perpetually darker, you can get perpetually lighter, depending on what you want to do, or funnier. In my case, it's spicier. I don't know how I keep getting spicier, because I keep saying there's a limit to how much you can put in a 45 to 50,000 word book.
Is there though?
But apparently there's not. There might not actually be, because they just keep getting spicier, which I'm not complaining about. But again, you still have to strike the right balance as you're going through your series. You cannot be so completely off the mark from book one to book four, in this case, film one to film four.
Yeah, I mean, just think about Thor as a character. Thor in the first movie compared to Thor Ragnarok, compared to Thor in like Avengers Endgame, compared to Thor in this one. They do not feel
not the same character.
Like the same character at all.
No.
And they kind of feel like they should have. I mean, you can have some growth. Obviously, you want character growth, but they feel like they were played by different actors. And they were. So,
and I don't think that's Hemsworth's fault, honestly. I really don't.
No, I think it's he was directed to do these things, and
it's just, when I think about it, it's so far off the mark. And you had, okay, listen, you can't keep Thor in depressive mode forever, right? He can't be depressed Thor forever. He's got to come back and be the superhero, because that's the character. But if you don't give us that redemption story, if you don't show us how he got to, okay, I'm in this dark headspace, to now I've become the superhero again, you're missing a whole story there.
I think this Thor has not gone through that redemption at all. I think he is just in denial of anything. He feels like he is ignoring all responsibility and is like lost several IQ points in the process. Like, how does he get progressively less intelligent?
Right.
To me, he feels like he's less intelligent than when he started out.
It's hard to say if it's less intelligent or if he just feels like a shell. Kind of just feels like a shell of a character, like a 2D character.
Maybe that's what it is that there's no depth to the character anymore. It feels like a caricature. Maybe that's what it is.
Yes.
Maybe that's what it is.
Yep. Yeah. That hits the nail on it for me. Yeah, it does feel very much like a caricature of Thor. And you could work with that. Like, you could develop that as part of his healing journey, is that he doesn't know who he is.
And he's deflecting with humor and, denial. Sure.
But you got to show us.
You got to show us.
You got to show us. You got to show us all of that. And I think we get a tiny bit when he's talking with the Guardians, and he's like, latches onto them so much, and when he has to leave them, it's kind of like, it's a little bit of a devastating thing for him.
Right.
Where they don't really it is funny where they don't really care as much, and he cares so much. So I think we get a little peek into that, but like, dude, you got to bust open that door. You got to show us way more for it to be believable.
Yep. All right. So what about Mighty Thor and Jane's journey for you? Did her journey, did her arc, did that work for you, from maybe even going back from her first introduction to the first movie into now? Has her arc, has she grown as a character? Has she changed? Has she evolved? Or is she the same as she started, but just now has cancer?
Okay, I don't know if it's, in this case, it is the actor, because Natalie Portman for me does sometimes, and again, this is just my opinion, don't come for me, but sometimes I do feel like she's a little flat. Like, she does play characters in a similar way, so that I can't always differentiate between them. I think even Black Swan, which is a brilliant movie, like, it's still, I feel like I'm always seeing Natalie Portman no matter who she plays.
Yep.
So I think it's partly that. but I think it's also, again, the other thing was we've had 8 years in between, so that's a lot of time to not see a character and then for them to come back and suddenly they're, in our lives again and what you've been doing that whole time. So her backstory was believable in the sense that, yeah, she would pour herself into work. Yeah, she would be that scientist mind and concentrated on saving the world in that way. But then who is she after that?
Yeah.
Who is she beyond the scientist?
Yeah.
Could not tell you.
And playing the cancer card is a bold card to play. I never really believed that she had cancer. I never felt that the gravity of that diagnosis with her performance. I didn't
Yeah.
feel like she had any inkling that she, had this awful, awful thing. And I think that does boil down to an actor. I've never really been much of a fan of hers because I think she plays things flat. It feels like it's phoned in. It feels like she's not actually
Yeah.
giving anything. And so I had no, I couldn't make any connection with her and feel for her journey because
Right.
it didn't feel earned. I didn't feel like,
And you think about that too, like writing a character who has cancer, right? Who's facing their own mortality in such a
ah,
devastating way, right? There's so many facets to that journey and so many ways that you could play, write that part in and then as an actor play that part. But I think about the flip side of suddenly, you know, having this amazing power and suddenly having, not that the cancer's gone, but you have like your old energy back and more because you've taken on this superhero role.
yeah,
How incredible that would be, but also knowing there's a time limit on it.
right.
They're super heavy, human emotions that we're talking about, and I don't think we got any of it on
No,
screen.
it did not play. I think that's what they wanted us
Mm-hmm.
to feel that, you know, but we didn't actually see any of that. Maybe it was some of the stuff that was cut. I don't know, but I never got the sense of that push and pull of wanting to sort of feel alive and knowing that it's making things worse. And I
Right.
never got that. So, spoiler alert, at the
Yeah.
end, I didn't
You
I
didn't feel
didn't
bad
shed a
for her.
single tear. I didn't. It felt no weight to me, and
And there was also no play with that against the villain. There should
yeah,
have been. Like
sure,
the hero, essentially in her case, the hero that is dying, right? Against the villain that has given up everything, knowing that he has a time limit too for revenge. So she's giving up her chance to live. Again, spoiler alert, but she's giving up her chance to live in order to be this superhero, knowing there's a time limit to help Thor, whereas the villain is giving this up. It's to seek revenge. This is a huge conflict that should have come to a head, and we should have felt the weight of those things. But again, because we didn't have the right tone, we didn't
mm,
get to feel the weight of it
yeah,
because we had screaming goats, which
yeah,
were hysterical and like
right,
very funny.
sure,
We had Korg, who was comic relief, who becomes a face,
yeah,
and has little
yeah,
rock
that was
babies.
funny. Yeah,
Like all of that's awesome, but it doesn't
we didn't get her
give it.
why. We didn't get her
No.
reason why she was choosing to become, you know,
Mighty Thor.
Mighty Thor.
Yeah.
We never understood why. She just did it. Why?
Yeah.
What are your motivations? Like, it's killing you. Why? What is it to help Thor? Is it because you love Thor? Is it uh, 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 we don't know. We never really got the answer. It just the movie needed Mighty Thor.
Yeah.
And that's not enough of an answer for me. Um knowing the level of scripts that have come out of Marvel,
Mm-hmm.
this one was disappointing to me, because the tones just clashed so much for me. But again, there were some really great things about this movie. I will watch it again. I will laugh again. But those things will be like
I
they
kind
will.
of again just wish they would have made this movie as a Mighty Thor movie.
Yeah.
right? Had her story, her being the central character against this villain. The juxtaposition would have been beautiful.
Yeah.
And then had a Thor movie that was like a Ragnarok sequel that was all camp and funny.
Yeah.
If you would have separated those two, we could have had two like really good films, I think. But
Sure.
instead, mixing them together just
Did
kind
not.
of
It was oil and
yeah.
water. Didn't
Yeah.
quite
Didn't
quite
jive.
mix the way that they should have. Much in the same way, I think, like the introduction of Zeus. We shouldn't be laughing at Zeus. I don't know. We shouldn't be laughing at Zeus. Zeus should be like the big, we should be fearing Zeus, not laughing at him. And
I mean,
I don't.
were you not entertained?
I
kept waiting for the Russell Crowe moment. I'm sorry. It was yeah.
And then, and so then they're teasing, these other gods in the after credits. Well, like, are they going to be just as campy as Zeus? Because, who cares? What threat
Right.
is that? So
Right.
they didn't give weight to these gods so that even if the god killer did come and kill them, would we care? Because
and they were horrible.
They're idiots. They're, yeah. I mean, I felt like that was a wasted opportunity, that they could have really been intentional with that and given us
my guess is we're gonna have Thor 5. It's gonna be camp and it's gonna be these gods and hopefully we'll go in that direction. And if that's the case, okay, fine, I can get on board with that. I can get on board with going back to camp. Just don't give me the super heavy storyline if you're gonna do camp.
Yeah.
That's all.
I mean, I think that Ragnarok was a good balance of that. There was a lot of humor, but there were a lot of serious elements, but they worked well because I think the script was better.
Yeah.
And they had, I think, better actors in lifting up the story as well. So
yeah.
It
also shows you how much Thor needs Loki. I hate to say it, but they're the balance between the two of them and the way the actors play off of each other.
His absence was felt hugely. I mean, Loki's the only thing that saved the second movie.
Agree.
He might have been able to save this one.
Yep. Which shows you the importance of an antagonist and somebody for your hero to really butt heads with and play off of, and have that motivation for that. Loki and Thor is a powerful combo.
Jane would be that.
That was never going to happen.
No.
That was never going to happen.
No.
It just doesn't have the same feeling. It doesn't have the same weight, the same feeling, the same, kind of play back and forth. It's just doesn't work.
Yeah. All right, one last question for you that it has a little bit to do with writing. But I guess it does. It's seed planting. Okay, when we write things, if we have a grand vision in mind, we're going to be planting some seeds in early stories to sort of make a grander vision happen. Right. Do you think the introduction of all of these younger characters in Phase 4 is leading up to anything? Maybe a Young Avengers, maybe.
So this goes back to what I was talking about before. Marvel is being smart in saying, okay, we've got our millennials, we've got our Gen Xers. Now we got to shoot for Gen Z and beyond, right? We got to get them on board because they didn't grow up with Marvel. We got
to go beyond the 40-year-old white men.
Yep.
We've got to merge beyond them.
Because they don't have the same nostalgia that we do growing up with this stuff and seeing what Marvel has become. They've only started with, oh, well, Marvel is Marvel, and that's the stuff that those old people watch, essentially. Right. So they have to hook in the younger audience. And I do think it's smart to have all of these characters in Phase 4. The only thing I can see is that you're going to have a danger of losing your tried and true audience, because your tried and true audience isn't necessarily going to jive with this new set of characters. I think they did it really well in Hawkeye in getting, which is funny to say because everybody likes to kind of like poo-poo on Hawkeye.
I liked Hawkeye.
Everybody's poo-poo on Hawkeye. It's just a thing. It's like a meme.
Right. No, I know.
Hawkeye was great.
Hawkeye was great.
And I think they did a really good job of balancing like that family friendly aspect, everybody could watch aspect. And I think some of the newer stuff is going to be more challenging. I think Miss Marvel in particular is not going to jive with everybody, and that's okay. It doesn't have
It's
to.
absolutely. Well, I think one of the things that maybe the Miss Marvel 2 or Marvel 2, I don't even know what it is. I think the pairing up with an older Avenger was missing in Miss
Yep.
Marvel, and so there was nothing sort of pulling in that older audience. People just thought,
Right.
oh, this is just for kids. There's only really teeny boppers, and
Exactly.
so all the other ones, you've got Strange and Peter, and you've got Hawkeye, and well, I guess maybe she'll be Hawkeye too. I don't know. That was sort of left ambiguous.
Even in Thor, we had
you got it.
Love and Thunder.
You got it. You got it. So yeah, they're building all of these up, even in Winter Soldier, Isaiah's grandson.
Yep.
I mean, I think that's what they've sort of been doing. It's almost like a babysitter's club. You've got all of these older characters carrying these younger ones forward, and maybe when they've aged up into their 20s, those older characters can fade away. But in the meantime, maybe they'll have like a series of the Young Avengers, because it's not as big of a financial risk to do maybe a series as it would be a movie.
And look, you have to always be thinking about who your demographic is, right? So if you're going to pull in this new audience, you need to do it in a way that's going to make sure you don't lose the old one and still pull in the new one and do it seamlessly. And I think, like I said at the beginning, they're experimenting a lot, which is awesome. Some things are gonna, do really great and take off, and some things are gonna fall by the wayside. It's just a matter of what those things are.
What shakes out, yeah. And that can work in your own writing as well. If you're trying to introduce something and start to go in a different direction with your writing, trying to seed those elements early on, so that it's not such a total shock when you do something different.
Exactly. Well said.
Little end cap there for you.
Nice. I can't think of a better way to end it. So I think that about does it for today, huh?
Yeah. We will see you next week.
Yes. Have a great week, everybody, and see you next time. Bye.
Wait! Before you go, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and check us out on our website, boundbybookspodcast.com.